Hey, welcome to Wrench On. Today we're going to be looking at how to remove and install bearings in an X4 steering rack. So come in a little closer and we'll look at how we're going to do that. I've got a 5.5 millimeter nut driver, a 2 millimeter Allen wrench, M3x10 button head, and an X4 steering rack. This is a piece that is made by Link Stuff, and we'll talk about in the description how you can get a hold of those if you'd like. And a flanged M3 nut and a new bearing. So you may not notice this, but these bearings go bad frequently, I guess I'd say. They're tiny little bearings, the balls are small, and the race gets damaged when you hit something and hit against the ball. But you don't really notice it. It's not too often people take it apart. So it's important to check them. And when they're bad, they don't just come out like they would in a hub or something. So to get these out, we're going to take the M3 button head and we're going to insert it into either side. I'm not sure whether there's a right or a wrong side to bring it out from, but we're just going to pick one. I've done it both ways and I can't tell the difference. There's a recessed side to this plastic piece. I'll set it down there so you can see. And that recessed side goes towards the bearing. So we're going to put that on the screw and follow it up with the flanged nut and then tighten it up by hand. Now you'll notice the button head is smaller than the outer race of the bearing. So when we tighten this together, you'll feel a little bit of resistance. You definitely don't want to go after it all the way right at the beginning. But eventually that steering rack pops right off and you can back the nut off the screw and you'll see that bearing is free from the steering rack now. Now don't get them mixed up. I'm going to set this one over here. No good anymore. I've got a new bearing to put in. The process for installing the bearing is more or less the reverse of what we just did. We're going to use the flat side of this plastic washer now. The flat side goes against the bearing. And since we're not pressing on the inner race, there's no worry about the bearing being damaged as it's being installed. Then goes the steering rack and the flanged nut. You could do this with a regular M3 nut. The flange just makes it easier so you don't have to find a washer the right size. Now put just finger tight pressure there and you kind of want to center it, move it around and make sure it's in the right position before you use the nut driver to tighten it in. You'll feel the same resistance pressing the bearing in as you did when you pressed the bearing out. And you'll feel it bottom out. Once it's bottomed out, give it a little bit of a tightening and remove the nut and you've got a bearing installed in the steering rack. I'm much appreciative that they removed the shoulder from the T4 version of the steering rack, so now we have an easy way to replace those bearings. I check them pretty frequently. They just go bad after a while, and for them only being $1, it's worth checking. Thanks so much for visiting us on Wrench On.